welcome to episode 39 of the podcast, and I remain your host, Omobi. For today's episode, we will continue discussions on schedules of specific commitment that I started last week. I noted that state parties are required to set out in a schedule commitments each state party is willing to undertake in respect of market access, national treatment, and additional commitments on trade in services. So today we're looking at modification of schedules of specific commitment, that is instances or situations where state parties can modify their commitments. Okay, so let's go right into today's episode. The first point, a state party may withdraw any commitment in its schedule after 3 years that the commitments entered into force. That's 3 years after it entered into a commitment, the state party may withdraw or modify any commitment in its schedule. So that's the first one. Then the next one, the modifying state party, that's the party that wants to modify or withdraw, has to inform the secretariat that not later than 3 months before the date that intends to implement the modification or withdrawal, and the secretariat then goes on that shall promptly inform the other state parties. Once the AFCFTA secretariat informs the other state parties about the intended modification or withdrawal, any state party that is likely to be affected by that can request that the modifying state party should enter into negotiations with an agreement with respect to compensation. So then they can reach an agreement on necessary compensatory adjustment, and any negotiations and agreements they are entering into, it must be based on mutually advantageous commitment that is not less favorable than with that was provided in commitment prior to such negotiations. So that is that point. And also the compensatory adjustment, that's the compensation that they're agreeing on, has to be made on a most favored nation basis. I did, and there was an episode, so you may have to go through the episode. I did an episode on most favored nation treatment, so you may want to listen to that episode to get details on what most favored nation treatment in respect of trade and services, on what that covers. So you may want to listen to the episode. So that's that. Then the next one, if the affected state party and the modifying state party do not reach an agreement eventually, then the affected state party can refer the matter to dispute settlement, and it must also take part in the dispute process. However, if an affected state party or if no affected has requested for dispute settlement, then the modifying state party is free to implement the proposed withdrawal or modification within a reasonable period of time. And the provision, that's the AFCT also provides that the modifying state party may not withdraw or modify its commitment until it has made necessary compensatory adjustments in conformity with the findings of the dispute settlement. So if after the dispute settlement, the state party has to make compensation or provide compensation to any affected state that it can, then it has to do that before they can modify or withdraw the schedule. However, there is a possibility that the modifying state party may not comply with the findings of the dispute, because dispute settlement provision that is stated here is arbitration. And if the state party then decides to go ahead to implement without paying or making provisions for compensation rather, then the affected state party in this instance that participated in dispute settlement may also withdraw or modify any equivalent benefits in conformity with the findings of the dispute settlement. So if the modifying state party does not compensate, then the affected state party also can withdraw or modify any substantial equivalent benefits in conformity with the findings of the dispute settlement. Okay. Okay, and finally, the Committee on Trade and Services shall facilitate such negotiations and establish related appropriate procedures. Right, so this is the end of today's episode, and until next week, Thursday. However, as usual, the podcast is for educational purposes only. If you need expert advice, please reach out to me or any trade advisor around you. And until next week, Thursday, I say bye-bye.